Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Frank, DIY with Frank, Throwaway Society. I do all kinds of different things on this channel, and today we're going to be working on this 2004 Jeep Liberty Limited. When you're driving it, there's kind of a rumbling sound, vibration on the front, and how you can kind of pinpoint it is if you turn to the right, all the weight shifts to the left, and if the noise is quiet or quiets down, then you know that that's what you're looking at, and more than likely it's going to be a bearing. So I'm going to replace the bearing today, and thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you can learn something for yourself if you have a Jeep Liberty. Thank you for joining me, and let's take a look at some of the things that we're going to need for this job. Now first, we have these knuckle to bearing bolts. These are quite expensive, maybe $10 a piece. There's 3 of them. And you can kind of see from this new hub, you got 1, 2, and 3. And I'm kind of not thrilled with the heads on these. They're kind of a star configuration there on the head. And that's why you're going to need this E14 socket. And that's going to fit right on the star head. So there's 3 of those, and the part number on these is 06503088, and it's a knuckle to bearing bolt. Okay, we have our hub here, and it does have ABS, so that's why we have this wire. We're going to have to hook that up. We have a socket for the center bolt for the hub that we're going to have to remove. It's fairly large. This is a 36 millimeter. We've got some safety goggles, of course, so we might have to be doing some cutting later. If it doesn't come off, we're going to have to use an angle grinder and do some cutting. We have some MAP gas to heat it up. I recommend that. I remember on the other side when I did it, it was difficult. I heated them up and it made it a lot easier, so you should have some of that. Do some grease just in case. I have some penetrating oil, some gloves, rags. You know, we've got the jack stands. I always use the jack stands. You can't use too many jack stands for your safety, so you know, if you have 4 jack stands, use 4 of them. But I have a hydraulic jack. We're going to jack it up. I'm going to go ahead and start removing this wheel, and we'll take a look at what we have there. Alright, so we've got the wheel turned to the right. That just makes it easier to get to that center bolt. Because of the wrench, there's no extension on it. So if you didn't turn the wheel, it would be, number one, harder to get back to the bolts behind here, obviously. But also when you're trying to get this 36 millimeter bolt off here, you know, you're going to scratch up the fender well. So just easier that way. This does turn. I already loosened this, but it does turn the entire thing. So it's better to either wedge this up with something. You know, you can put something in there that touches the ground, similar to this, and be able to get actually this way, and that would give you, that would stabilize it. Or you can have somebody go in and hit the brake for you. Make sure your jacks are good, have them hit the brake and hold it, and that'll give you enough to get this 36 millimeter bolt off. And we're going to have to remove that to pop the axle piece out back, which inserts into the new wheel bearing. So I'm going to work on, I got to get this caliper off. There's 2 bolts for the caliper that hold it on this bracket, and then there's 2 larger bolts, one on top, one on the bottom, that holds the bracket on. We're going to have to remove that, and we're going to have to pull this rotor off. Now, of course, the rotor might be a little seized to that. We might have to give it some persuasion, but I'm also noting that the routing of the ABS cable, so that when I come back to it, I actually took a picture with my cell phone. I can come back and make sure I put it the right way. so it has enough play for turning, and it's not you know, jumbled up in anything back there. So I'm going to begin to take this off, and it's going to be a little hard for me to get a view behind here just because of my camera. It's got a much wider lens on it, like it's good for scenery and things like that, and it does a great job with videos, but you may not be able to get a shot because of the distance of the bolts back here, but I'll do my best to explain what I'm doing. Sometimes you got to pound the socket on there. You don't want to go with a size up because then it'll strip it. Alright, so we removed the caliper, and I have a little spring that I had laying around that I just hang the caliper up. It keeps it from, you know, damaging the brake line, and it's out of the way, so we hung that out of the way. Now all we have left is that bracket, and we have to remove the rotor. You don't have to get too crazy with leverage with this. I'm just going to use a part of the jack because it is hollow on the inside. So we're going to slip it on there. And it's that easy. There's one. Sometimes the sockets stick on there. And we'll go up to the top here. Same procedure. Leverage, it's hollow on the inside. So we have our rotor. Alright, so here's what we're looking at. We have the center bolt nut right there. And we have, you can see it's kind of rusty, that's one of these bolts here that's coming in from the back. There's one there, there's going to be one down there, and then one on the other side. There's three of them. So what I'm going to do is heat it up first. I'm going to heat it up, I'm going to spray it with some penetrating oil, let it sit for, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. Then we'll hit it with some heat and get that socket going from the back and see if we can't get this thing off. Alright guys, so just remember when you're working with gas, you don't want Fire Marshal Bill over here, right? You don't want this to happen.
Let me show you something.
So, and start to heat it up. We're going to continue this process for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll go from the back and see if we can't get the bolts out. Alright, so I've heated them up, and I'm going to take the socket, the special star socket. We're going to get behind there and see what bolts come loose. If not, we're going to apply a little more heat and keep going and just be patient with it. Alright guys, so we got one of them off from the top. You can kind of see the star head right there. They get a little rusty. It's kind of a poor design. Plus you got to have that special socket for it. I'm going to go ahead and work on the other two, and hopefully I'll have some luck, or I got to get the cutter out and we got to do some cutting. Alright, so I was unable to get the bottom bolt off, so that we might have to be doing some cutting on that. which I really didn't want to do, but that's what we have to do. It's going to be tricky because I don't want to damage where it's mounted to. I think I got an angle I can get to. Now I turn the wheel to the left so I can get to that other bottom one on the left. So it's just a little bit easier when you turn the wheel to the left for that one. So I'm going to continue, and hopefully we can get that thing cut off. I'm going to have to get my grinder. So I'll get all that together and we'll get to work on that. Alright, well, we managed to get 2 of the 3 bolts out, and that is the E14 socket. I know I mentioned that in the beginning, but it's E14. You can pick it up at AutoZone or whatever. But I don't like the star configuration. I mean, the bolts are really rusty, and that one's just so rusty it just strips. So we're going to have to get out our trusty cutting tool. Alright, so here's a close-up of the hub, the wheel bearing. And that's our problem child right here. And it mounts to here. So there is, you don't want to damage this part. I'm going to try not to damage this, but I want to get as close a cut as I can to the edge there. You know, and then I'll give it a nice little pound with a sledgehammer, and this should pop off. But I'm going to work at cutting this as close to that edge as I can without damaging this part, because all the threads are on the hub itself. So once I get, it might even work out where once I cut most of the threading away, I can give that another go, and it might come out then. Alright, I'm going to give that wrench a shot again. Yeah, I'm a little optimistic. I've cut most of the threads. Alright, we're not getting anything from that. What I'm going to try to do is take that center bolt off and give it a tap, because all the other bolts are gone, and I've cut half of that bolt threads away. Maybe I'll get lucky, it'll pop off. We can finish the cleanup of it once that hub comes loose. So I'm going to get my sledgehammer. I'm going to first take that bolt off, the 36mm one, and then we'll see what happens. See what we get here. Still wants to be stubborn. It's never easy. Alright guys, with a little bit of persuasion, you can see I sliced it here. There is a piece of metal on here, but it's got to be a lot easier to work with getting that off now with this out of the way. You can see the holes. We can see it separated here. So I'm going to go ahead and slip that off of the axle there. Get it out of the way. We'll clean this piece up here. Might have to do some more cutting to get that off of there. And then we'll continue. I'm thinking I'm just going to leave this ABS here. And then when I run the new wire, that way, you know, I did take pictures. But the wire's there. I can just, as I string the new wire in, just remove the old one. That way you know exactly the route that it's going. So that's what I'm going to do. Anyway. I don't care about really damaging the cable. Oh. There's our old hub. Got our axle here. I'm going to try to put something in there so I can have room here, so I can cut this. And you guys think I should change the grinding wheel on this? Alright, so I got the screwdriver wedged in there to kind of keep the axle away from the area I'm going to work here. And you can see this is actually turning. It's actually turning there, so all I have to do is just finish trimming that off, and hopefully that'll fall off and the bolt will come out. Alright guys, you can see the bolt here. Didn't take much effort once I just started trimming it up a little more. Now let's look at the where it mounted to. Alright, you can see where it mounted to. Didn't damage anything. All those 3 bolt holes look good. So we're ready to put the new wheel bearing on. So let's do it. Now it's pretty much going to be the same. I'm just going to put that on there and from the back, and it's much nicer working with brand new bolts. So that's going to be easy. I'm going to put a little WD-40 on them so they go in easy. Tighten them down. Then we'll just assemble everything back in reverse order. Now I did add a little grease to the axle just to help this go on. Alright, so when you do this, don't worry too much if it's hard to get this in position. Just get it far enough where you can start the bolts in there and let the bolts do the work. The bolts will pull the wheel bearing to this surface. So that's all I'm doing. It's just going around, putting the new bolts in. Tightening them up. And I'm going to try to tighten them in a star fashion so they all get tightened equally. So I'm going to pop this other one in. I'm going to have to turn this wheel. Remember, for this one, it's a little bit easier if you turn the wheel to the left to get to that bottom one. So I'm going to do that, and we'll continue. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put our center nut on there, and if there's no one to help you, you can just do as I'm doing here without damaging the threads. We're not going to crank it down too much, but I just wedged the tire iron there. It's against the floor. Then I'm going to take some leverage and just tighten her up. It doesn't have to be super tight. Should be tight, but don't overdo it. I think we're good right there. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put the brake bracket back on there. Then we can attach the caliper to that. But I do have to put the rotor on first. So I'm going to do that first. Alright, so we've got the rotor on, we've tightened that bolt, we have the pads in place. Now I'm going to take the caliper off my hanging spring there and slide it over here and finagle it in there and put the bolts in for that. And I did already run the ABS cable up through a hole, so it's under the hood, so I just have to plug it in. And I'll cut away this old wire. You know, it kind of acted like a guide for routing the new wire. So I'm just going to cut that, and then when I'm done here and I open the hood, I can just unplug this one and plug the new one in. Alright, so let's get a look at this old hub here. You can see where I had cut it off here. But I want you to listen to this. Okay, guys, hear that? That's the play. That's the play in there. You should be ashamed of yourself. Wheel bearing on the left side. But we shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Alright guys, that does it. The wheel's on. I'm ready to pull it out. It's all done. I hope if you have a similar job that you found some insight in my video. I'm sorry I couldn't get behind the wheel as much as I wanted to, but I hope I explained it well enough on the outside that you understood what I was doing. And it's a complete job. You know, it took a couple hours. Not too bad overall. Could have been worse. The key was probably the cutting tool. If I didn't have the cutting tool, I wouldn't have never been able to do that. So thanks for watching. Thanks for the subscribers. You know, if you like it, like the video, share it. I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time.